thing, which is super great, right? But there may be certain circumstances where you want to run your own build agents, and we're going to cover how to do that and all of the depths of the things that kind of relate to that whole piece today. So practically, though, we're going to start off by talking about the architecture of the agent and build pools, and then the rest of the time we're just going to show you how it's done with Windows, and then I'm going to give you a demo of how it's done with our Linux-based build agents. So architecture, man, Donovan, how does this work?
Well, what's good is we've changed everything, but we haven't broken our backwards compatibility. They run side by side with the build engines and the build controllers and agents that we have today. So you don't have to lift and shift all of your build definitions. You can actually piecemeal them as you move forward. Take your old XAML builds one at a time if you need to, and then port them over to our newer system. So they will run side by side. There's no more physical controller. A lot of our customers were complaining that I've now tied this controller to this collection and I can't use those build agents anywhere else but to that collection that's tied to that particular controller. So we got away with that, and we have a concept of a pool of agents that then you have your controllers register to have access to them. And we'll go through a diagram that'll kind of visualize what we're talking about there, but it gives you a lot more flexibility in the way that you can actually use your agent pools and things like that. And also, what else did we have on that slide there? We also had the, they're Xcopy deploy. Well, they're similar, they're kind of Xcopy deploy. They will be for me. I think David's demo is going to be a little bit more impressive because he has to go through a little bit more steps to do our cross-platform agent, but we're trying to make that as easy as we possibly can. The Windows agent is very, very easy to stand up, and as David said, there are going to be times where you're going to need to stand up your own. There might be tools that you need access to that aren't on our hosted build agents at that time. Also, when you go on our hosted build agents, you're in line with everyone else in the world needing to do a build who needs to get to those hosted build agents. So standing up your own agent can give you much quicker queue times. It can give you much faster builds overall because you can put them on whatever size hardware you need. And it also allows you to install whatever third-party tools you need on your build agent to be able to perform maybe a Wix installer compile which isn't on our hosted agent. So a lot of good reasons on why you might want to create one. And we're going to show you exactly how to do that here in just a second. So how does the architecture change? As we mentioned before, instead of having a controller tied to a collection now has to get permissions to work on a particular pool. And in the diagram that you see before you, we have a TFS deployment, and that's going to be where your TFS server lives. And we actually create two what we call pools of agents. So we have pool 1 and pool 2. And down below we have these two collections, collection 1 and collection 2. And as you can see, we're able to take the pool that is pool 1 and actually assign it to both collection 1 and collection 2, which is something we could not do in our old product. In our old product, as you can see on C1, we would have to install a controller. And that controller is where we'd be able to associate our agents, and those agents would only be able to be used on collection 1. We also have a special pool for whatever reason called pool 2, which we have chosen to only assign to collection number 2. And as you can see on the machines on the right hand side, these are the machines that are hosting those individual agents. And as we have on the machine number 2, we can have our old and our new agents side by side, and we can actually use whatever resources we want on those machines to basically load balance our pools for us. So it's really very, very flexible. They live side by side, and now we can have multiple collections using the exact same pool of agents.
And even though that says TFS deployment, that could also, all of that would be also in the cloud Visual Studio Online.
Oh, very good point. Yeah, so when we're taking TF, that's a very good distinction there. It could be TFS VSO deployment. Absolutely. Very good point.
Okay, what about security for the agent pools? So
security on TFS is a large topic, one of which we could probably do an entire MVA on. So what we're going to focus on now is if you want to go and take the actions that we're going to be taking here in a moment, there's certain permissions that you're going to need to have. First of all, your Team Foundation Server Administrator has all the privileges they need to be able to create new application pools. And there's these two special groups, one of which will allow us to set permissions on an individual or to give them the rights to create additional application pools. Once an application pool, agent pool, as soon as an agent pool exists, I can then go into that agent pool and give someone specific permissions on that pool alone. So they'll be able to add agents to that pool, but not add additional agents to our infrastructure or TFS deployment. So there's 3 different levels. There's the Team Foundation Server Administrator, has all the privileges he needs. He can then delegate that to someone who wants to be able to create new pools. Once a pool is created, we can then delegate roles to just that one particular pool. So that's the security. Now I'll show you where, when I add my agent, where all those areas are on the UI.
So let's see it in action now.
Oh, great. So we're already looking at adding a new build agent. So I'm going to use the same machine I was on. You can use any machine that you like. When I normally build a build agent, I like to spin up a machine in Azure that has most of the tools that I already need on it. So I usually go and spin up a Visual Studio 2015 RC machine that's going to have all the compilers and a lot of great tools on it already. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate inside of my VSO account to this little gear icon. This gear icon is going to allow me to go to the administrative portal, and then from the collection level, I can start to see where I have my build agents defined in my pools. And as you can see, we have 2. We have a default pool, which is currently empty, and during this demo, we're actually going to add up an agent there. And then we have our hosted agent as well. On the right-hand side, you can see what our hosted agent's capabilities are. Remember earlier I talked about demands on a build, and those demands are then cross-referenced with these capabilities of the agent. So if my build demanded that it has grunt, it will then verify that grunt has actually a capability on that particular agent. When we add our own build agent, you're going to see a huge list of capabilities that it has that goes beyond what we have in our hosted agent, which is one of the reasons you might want to actually stand up your own. So the way that you get started is that you simply click on Download Agent. But before I do that, I'm going to talk to you really quickly about some of that security that I mentioned earlier. So if I want to go and manage my pools, we're going to see that there's a group here called the Agent Pool Administrators. You need to be a member of this group to be able to go and add additional pools. And as you can see, the Team Foundation Server Administrators are already in this group, which is what I was saying before. If you are the TFS admin, you already have all the permissions that you need. I can then add additional groups or people to this role, granting them access to then add new pools to our TFS deployment or VSO deployment. Once a pool is created, it also has 2 subfolders here, or 2 subgroups. And these groups are where I can then delegate permissions to this one individual pool. So that the individual that I add here will not necessarily have permissions to then add new pools to our TFS. So again, there's 3 levels: TFS Administrator, the agent pools at our agent pool permissions level, and then down here under each individual pool, I have another group that I can then add permissions and security for. Okay? So with that already taken care of, we can go back in and find my download button. And there's something very important you're going to want to do after you download this from our site. So I'm just going to go ahead and store this in my downloads folder. And then I'm going to open it up, and the first thing you're going to want to do is right click on it and then make sure you unblock it. Right? You're going to have lots of trouble if you forget to do this step. So download it, unblock it.
Maybe just zoom into that one almost.
Oh,
just to reiterate the
unfortunately I've already clicked it, so it won't be there again, but it's definitely down here in the bottom. I don't think I have zoom in on this on this machine, but you'll see the big unblock icon here, or button. Just click on that unblock, and that's going to make sure that we have access to all the files that are inside of this zip folder. I then come here and I'm simply going to open it up. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to actually extract it. So let me go ahead and extract this. And I like to extract it somewhere very shallow on my hard drive. So I'm just simply going to extract it to C/agent. Once all the files are extracted, I'm just going to simply fire up PowerShell. So let's go ahead and go back to our old PowerShell command. Let's cd into our agent folder. And then from here, I'm simply going to be able to run that configuration. Now, one piece of information I'm going to need to complete this configuration is the URL for our Team Foundation server in VSO. So we're going to go ahead and copy this too. So I'm going to go back here and just copy this URL for me real quick, because we are going to need that to complete the task.
Can we see this, maybe for the audience here, get a little bit bigger text for the PowerShell?
Sure, that's a good idea. So let's go and edit the font here. I forgot that I was coming back in here.
That's better.
How about that?
Yeah.
Great. So all I've done is CD'd into my agent folder that I extracted the zip file into, and there's going to be a configure agent.ps1 file that we're simply going to execute. And unfortunately, this is also going to fire up another window that I can go and adjust the properties for that here as well. So let's go ahead and increase these. Make that a little easier to read. So hopefully we can read that.
Yep.
It defaults to an agent name. If I wanted to change this agent name, I could. The next thing it's going to ask me for is my Team Foundation server URL, which I'm going to just paste from my clipboard. And then it's going to ask me what pool do I want to put it in. By default, we had the default and the hosted. And if I wanted to create my own pool, I might have done that, and I could put that name here. We're just going to go with the default. And now it's asking for where do you want me to actually do my work? When I do a git latest and I start running the tools to compile your code, what folder do you want me to use on your hard drive? I'm just going to go ahead and accept the default here, which is _work. And now it's asking me a very important question. Do you want me to run this as a Windows service that's going to start automatically every single time I reboot the machine? Or do you want me to run this in what we call interactive mode? Now, why would I choose one over the other? And interactive mode is going to be very important when you're going to want to run user interface type of tests that are going to have to interact with the desktop, because traditionally and by default Windows services cannot interact with your desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and say no here, which is the default, just so that you can see what the window looks like after it's been running, and we can actually see the output. But if you were to choose yes, it would simply ask you for the